to our Global Times show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fog. The military was testing how a biological weapon attack would affect the 800,000 residents of the city. So they perpetrated a biological attack on American citizens.
So do you support opening Fort Detrick for investigation?
I'm all for investigations as long as they can be unbiased. I don't think that really any country should investigate themselves and then say, look, we did nothing wrong, because that is never going to be reliable in a lot of people's eyes. So really, it should be, international observers that we can all agree on. And in a perfect world, these would be easy to find and easy to set up so that we have unbiased people looking at these things scientifically. So, I'm not opposed to investigations. The problem is you have the United States pointing to investigations that the U.S. funded and created, like with the genocide accusations. The U.S. points to other U.S. agencies and says, look what we found. And it turns out, well, it's just the same guy with a different mask on saying he found something. So, in that style, you can't really take those as accurate.
His racist lab leak theory was thrown out as crazy. But now that the crackpot conspiracy could be useful to Biden's anti-China rhetoric, all of a sudden the establishment and the media think it's a great conspiracy. CNN yelled last week what the lab leak theory's new credibility means.
Let's talk about CNN. What factors affect U.S. mainstream media like CNN?
Yeah, you had an interesting dynamic when Trump was still in office of, at times, CNN and Fox News, despite both being our corporate media, being on opposite sides of an issue. And what that had to do with was, at that time, CNN saw it as beneficial, and much of the ruling class in America saw it as beneficial to go against any Trump points, any Trump ideology. And so because Trump was pushing the China lab leak theory, pushing the China did this to us idea, those kind of racist ideas, CNN went against that because they were against Trump ideology. And so CNN at that time was willing to question those things, like you mentioned, however, and also celebrate China succeeding against the pandemic in many ways. But then once Biden got into office, once Trump is not the issue, now you've seen a reversal where CNN is now pushing the lab leak conspiracy, and CNN is pushing anti-China stories because they no longer feel the need to go against Trump talking points and Trump ideas. So it served their purpose at the time. You did have a unique situation in America for a bit there where Trump was actually something that was outside the standard American ruling class. Now, he's still part of the ruling class. He's still a billionaire. He still agrees with corporate America for the most part. So it wasn't that far outside of the American ruling class, but he was a slight offshoot of the American ruling class. And so you had a kind of going against each other in terms of CNN and Fox News. That has now largely stopped. And they are now agreeing on all of this anti-China propaganda, anti-Iran propaganda, anti-Cuba propaganda.
You've probably heard the news, folks. There's an epidemic of China forcing Uyghurs to labor against their will. The Guardian says there's a good chance your cotton T-shirt was made with Uyghur slave labor. The New York Times says a coalition.
Why does the U.S. choose Xinjiang to make an international fuss?
Yeah, so as the U.S. has increased or heated up this war of words against China, this Cold War, as we call it, against China, the U.S. has a playbook that it's used, the U.S. government has used many times, which is to try and get a country sanction, to try and create economic war against a country, to try and separate a country from itself, meaning get certain areas to separate off and break up the country. And so it's trying the same stuff against China. It's, trying to lay the groundwork for more and more economic war against China, which is very dangerous. And it pushes us towards the death of many people. Both through economics and through, God forbid, one day actual shooting of missiles and things like that. So let's hope we never get there. But this type of thing pushes countries towards that point, which is a terrible idea. We need to be working together. We need to be cooperating.
Does the American public believe such propaganda?
Sadly, yeah, but many people do believe it. I wish they didn't. That's my goal with my TV show, is to explain the truth to people and hope that you can get a certain percentage to realize the reality of the situation. Another segment I did, as you're mentioning, is about this propaganda against China for quote unquote genocide. When all of the accusations coming from the United States are coming from a tiny number of sources, all of them government linked, it really is hilarious once you look into where these accusations are coming from. But our mainstream media is largely they're just stenographers for the State Department. They don't actually question where these things come from. They don't actually look into it. They just repeat what our government tells them to repeat. And at this time, to create basically a new Cold War against your country, China, is the worst way for humans to behave. We are in dire times. We need to deal with climate change. We need to deal with environmental destruction. And to sit around playing war games, trying to crush other countries for the sake of power and the sake of resources is a terrible way to behave. And it's pushing the human species, which is all of us, towards extinction.
Why do U.S. media outlets that belong to different corporates unite on affairs like Xinjiang?
If you analyze the United States media at first, rather than pointing fingers at others, if you just look at our media, our mainstream media, which is responsible for most of the things that people see, unfortunately, our mainstream media is a tiny number of corporations, really just 5 or 6, and they are indebted to the government. I mean, they basically are connected to the government in that our corporate titans, our corporate American rulers, are one and the same with our government. They pay for our politicians to run for office. Those politicians do what they want in exchange. And so therefore, you have a corporate system that is, let's say, completely in bed with our government. And so organizations like CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, despite not being quote unquote state run, are only going to do the talking points of the American ruling class. They are never going to question capitalism. They are never going to really deeply question big oil or big pharma or any of the big corporate entities that run our lives. America is the #1 prison state in the world. They're never really going to question that. And so you have a system where it's almost better in that people think it's not state run. They say, you look at CNN and it has freedom to say whatever they want. But in fact, at the end of the day, they're always going to do whatever the American ruling class wants. And much of that is pushing for war. Our media has proven themselves to be belligerent and to be war hawks when it comes to attacking countries like Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, assisting with the attack on Yemen. And then you have, of course, the endless parade of U.S.-backed coups that we create in other countries. So, and all of this our media supports. Our media never questions it, really.
At least a third of those deaths are due to the fact that China does not guarantee their people health care, which is a barbaric, medieval, disastrous system. Wait. I'm sorry. That's the United States. Our government is our government is the one that's killed 500,000 of our.
So how did you come to this idea?
Yeah, that's a little comedy fun I was having called Satire, which, as most people know, is kind of taking the opposite viewpoint of the truth in such a way that people realize the insanity, the ridiculousness of it. So for the United States, a country where we, allowed over 1 million people to die from coronavirus, from COVID-19, and really have dealt with it incredibly poorly until getting the vaccine. It was hilarious for our accusations against China that are basically should have been accusations against ourselves. We proved that both during the Trump administration and in many ways, it wasn't just the Trump administration. You had chaos coming from the CDC as well. And it was laughable for us to be accusing another country of the problems that honestly are coming, are things that we are dealing with ourselves.
Some of you might have heard RT America, the network that puts out this show, has been forced to declare itself a foreign agent because it's funded by Russia. Now, this has never been done against a media outlet.
So how do you see the U.S. labels and restricts operations of media from adversary countries?
So at the beginning of Redacted Tonight each week, I say this is the American show written by Americans covering American news. But in America, it's called Foreign Agents because I'm American. I was born and raised here. My parents are American. I'm covering American news. And yet they've labeled, the channel RT and anything that's on it as foreign agent. Like you said, they've done the same to Chinese media. And it's a very dangerous thing because this label foreign agent that they have here in the United States was initially meant exclusively for lobbying firms of other countries, like literally people that are paid to do lobbying for foreign countries. However, now they're using it to attack media agencies, which had never been done before until a few years ago. So it's a very dangerous thing to accuse media people of being lobbyists for another country when that's not the truth. And it shows that America does not have press freedom. We use these labelings to make sure that this information cannot get out and cannot question, cannot be adversarial to the American government standpoint. And the other thing you can point to as America completely not supporting press freedom while we claim to is Julian Assange. We've made sure he's been imprisoned for so many years because he spoke the truth. He revealed the truth. The fact that the U.S. is just accusing every foreign media outlet of being a foreign agent is laughable. I mean, at the same time, our so-called American media, CNN, Fox News, etc., they are lobbyists for the war state. They are lobbyists for war profiteers. They are largely funded by people that make money creating war. So, they should be labeled as war agents, I think.
Have you ever been threatened by certain forces?
I don't feel afraid in that way, but Julian Assange proves that you can be arrested by the U.S. state for just printing the truth. And if the U.S. government wants to show that that's not true, then they need to release him. WikiLeaks has never reported something incorrect or false. Never. Not once. Not one sentence has been proven false. And yet, Julian Assange is in prison. And if the U.S. wants to have any kind of claim for press freedom, they must release him right now, which they could do. All they'd have to do is drop the appeal, and they could release Julian Assange. They also should stop going after Edward Snowden. They should stop harassing Chelsea Manning. They should release another whistleblower named Daniel Hale. They need to release whistleblowers and stop prosecuting them because these are all people who revealed corruption, revealed war crimes, revealed horrible things that the people should know about.
So do you think you work for Russian interests or in U.S. interests? Does it matter to you?
I work for U.S. interests because I want to create a U.S. that is peaceful and sustainable and lives in a world where we are not literally destroying the world around us. So there is nothing more caring for the U.S., there is nothing more patriotic for the U.S. than to want to create a peaceful and just world where we aren't the biggest prison state in the world, where we aren't locking everyone up, where people are free to live their lives in a sustainable way that can actually last for generations, and our grandkids won't have to suffer. So to me, that is the most pro-U.S. or anyone in their country, pro their country. It's pro all of our countries to live that way. So that's the way I view it. But I don't view myself as doing any sort of Russian interest media, because no one in Russia has told me to say anything. I'm going off my own viewpoints as an American who was born and raised here with a military father. I am going off my own viewpoints. So I'm merely standing up for a just and sustainable and peaceful world.